Since I like going back and listening to my old thoughts, I'm currently in the process of re-uploading some of my older videos in order to make them more compliant with YouTube's policies on reused content. But since I didn't want to do a lot of editing, here is the audio from my original review for this movie.
I've never understood the appeal of Scooby-Doo. I never cared for the original 1960s cartoons or the live-action films of the early 2000s, and I didn't care for anything in between. So when a new Scooby-Doo movie was announced, and it looked like it was going to be targeted at a much younger audience, I couldn't have cared less. I would have skipped seeing this film completely, but theaters are still closed, so here we are. Now, to be fair, I don't care for a lot of other Hanna-Barbera productions either. I just didn't grow up with 60s era cartoons. I don't think they're bad, and I do understand their cultural significance in TV history, but they were just never my cup of tea. Tom and Jerry, the Flintstones, Yogi Bear, the Jetsons, the Smurfs, these shows just weren't for me personally, which is why I found Scoob to be a curiously weird little film. It features other Hanna-Barbera characters that usually aren't associated with Scooby-Doo. In Scoob, Dick Dastardly is trying to open a portal to hell. Yep, that's the real plot of this movie, and in order to stop him, Scooby and the gang team up with the superhero Blue Falcon and his dog wonder, Dynomutt. And in case you didn't know already, Dick Dastardly and his dog Muttley, along with Blue Falcon, Dynomutt, and Dee Dee Skies for some reason, are all original Hanna-Barbera characters that belong to different TV shows in the 60s and 70s. So if you're wondering why they were included in a Scooby-Doo film, that's because Scoob was actually intended to launch a shared cinematic universe of Hanna-Barbera characters. And that sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. But that's Warner Brothers for ya. They are the same studio who rushed out the DCEU after all. But by having all of these different Hanna-Barbera characters together, Scoob doesn't feel like much of a Scooby-Doo film at all. It's a superhero movie, complete with a Batman-esque hero like Blue Falcon, a supervillain with a robot army and evil plans to open a portal to another dimension, and, of course, an obligatory skybeam. The Mystery Machine Gang doesn't even have a mystery to solve in this film. They just have to stop the bad guy from doing the bad thing. And I guess this is all just because superhero flicks are popular with kids these days? I may not have personally watched Scooby-Doo, but I did enjoy the simple premise of the show. The Mystery Machine characters taught children to not be afraid of things they didn't understand, and that supernatural mysteries usually have logical explanations behind them. But in Scoob, all of that shit is tossed out the window. The climax of the film doesn't have a clever reveal involving an ordinary person. It has an epic showdown with Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the gate to the underworld in Greek mythology. Why? What's wrong with Scooby-Doo's original premise? Is it too simple for children? Well, if mystery solving is too simplistic, then the story in Scoob is overstuffed and overly complicated. In case you wanted to know how Dick Dastardly planned on opening the gates to hell, it's through Scooby-Doo's DNA, because apparently Scoob is a descendant of Alexander the Great's dog, and Alexander the Great built the gate to the underworld in the first place in order to hide his riches for some reason. There's just a lot of unnecessary stuff going on in this movie. If you thought the film was going to be a cutesy little origin story about how Scooby-Doo met the Mystery Machine Gang, because, you know, that's what the trailers made this movie look like, then you'd be dead wrong. The origin stuff takes up the first 15 minutes of the movie or so, but then the film jumps into the present, or future, and then all hell breaks loose. Quite literally. You can just tell that Warner Brothers didn't know what to do with the Scooby-Doo property. They tried introducing old characters to a younger generation, but in doing so, Scoob feels like a movie that is caught between two audiences. the cutesy origin story prologue, along with the action-packed superhero narrative, was clearly targeted at young children. But there's a lot of material in this film that would go way over a child's head, including pop culture references to renowned people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Simon Cowell, and adult jokes about Tinder and copyright infringement. But the movie is too drastically different from its source material for adults to enjoy, along with being overly childish, immature, predictable, and light on substance. But it also features outdated elements and characters that children probably don't even care about anyway. So who is this film really for? I don't know. Warner Animation Group was created for the release of the first Lego Movie, and that's a film with a silly premise that perfectly balances a tone and sense of humor that both children and adults can enjoy. But the Lego Movie was created by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, a directing duo who have proven to be great storytellers. Scoob, however, was directed by Tony Cervone, who has only ever directed a handful of other straight-to-video Hanna-Barbera productions like Tom and Jerry, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Scooby-Doo and Kiss, Rock and Roll Mystery, and The Flintstones and WWE, Stone Age SmackDown. After hearing that list, I'm shocked that Warner Brothers wanted to give Scoob a theatrical release in the first place. Maybe it was always destined to be a straight-to-VOD movie, especially when you realize that it was written by the same guy who wrote Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip. There's a difference between the creative team who worked on Scoob and the people who worked on the Lego Movie is all I'm trying to say. Then you got talented actors like Will Forte, Gina Rodriguez, Zac Efron, and Amanda Seyfried in the voice cast of this film, and they're all just wasted. I couldn't even tell that they were in the movie. I didn't recognize any of them. Shaggy, Velma, Fred, and Daphne could have been played by anyone. So why bother getting A-list actors if you're not even going to utilize them properly? My favorite aspect of the movie is probably Mark Wahlberg as Blue Falcon. His character is just so delightfully dim-witted. I love when Wahlberg has a role that's clearly idiotic, yet charmingly fun at the same time. This version of Blue Falcon could probably fit right in on Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. So yes, Scoob did manage to get a few laughs out of me, but everything else about the film felt so superficial. You can tell someone at Warner Brothers went, people know the name Scooby-Doo, so we have to use that valuable IP. But we have to update everything for modern audiences, and everyone loves a good superhero film, so turn Scooby and the gang into millennial superheroes. What a weird pitch that is. Now, Scoob can be fun and entertaining at times, but it's so far removed from the spirit of the original Hanna-Barbera cartoons that it might as well be something completely new anyway. I mean, think about it. If Scoob was a box office success, what would the sequels and spin-offs look like? Would Scooby and the gang eventually cross over with Tom and Jerry, or the Flintstones, or Yogi Bear, or the Jetson, or the Smurfs, or any other Hanna-Barbera characters? I don't want to see that. Do you? If so, then maybe you will get a kick out of how absolutely bonkers this movie is. But I still have a hard time processing the fact that Scooby-Doo is a descendant of Alexander the Great's dog, and that he is the key to opening the gates to hell. But I guess I should clarify that I didn't hate this movie, I just thought it was easy to tell that the film had a bit of an identity crisis. So if you're an old school Scooby-Doo fan, or just a fan of Hanna-Barbera in general, then I don't see how you could enjoy a movie like this. But if you're not a fan of the property to begin with, then maybe you can find some enjoyment out of this insanely chaotic storyline, since you'd be pretty detached from these characters anyway. Like I said, I didn't hate it. I would just prefer to watch the simplistic original 60s cartoon that I never cared for in the first place, over an overly complicated, overly childish, and overly crowded film like this one, because I would likely give Scoob 2.5 out of 5 stars. Thanks for watching.